Defending Utah covers the stories others are just too often afraid to touch.
They don't nibble around the edges when it comes to pointing out threats to our liberty. They're not afraid to name names and call out organizations.
This is Defending Utah Radio, every Friday morning.
Welcome back to Defending Utah Radio right here on K-Talk AM 1640. This is Freedom Friday. It is July 5th, 2019, 9:22 in the morning. And this day right after Independence Day, we are talking about what are things that we can do to preserve and restore lost liberty. And talking about our history, we are in studio with, I'm Ben McClintock from defendingutah.org, where we think right and wrong, not right and left, as well here with Kevin Paulson.
Hello.
And also in studio with Brian Meekum from LatterdayConservative.com.
Hey.
So glad you both come into the studio today to join us. And our last caller brought up something that we wanted to bring to your attention. We've got at defendingutah.org. We've got a new book called The Proper Role of Government: A 21st Century Manifesto for Good Government. And so it's not just, it's a reprint of Azurtagh Benson's The Proper Role of Government, but it's more than that. So it does that in the beginning, and then the second half of the book goes through all 15 principles that President Benson laid out as, principles of good government, and then what are the origins for each of those principles, delving deep into what did the Founding Fathers say about those things, what are ways that we can apply it today. And so that's a great tool. Go to defendingutah.org and click on the store tab, and it's the first thing at the very top there, and get your copy of that new book, because it's going to be a really important tool for all of us to be able to use to be able to promote those principles and to understand their origins and how to apply them today. So go to defendingutah.org and click on the store tab and get that new book, The Proper Role of Government. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. But we were talking about things that we can all do to help preserve liberty. And Brian, you were talking about your origin story. How did you get involved in the cause of liberty? And you were talking about how you came across the story about Davy Crockett called "Not Yours to Give," and how that got you into liberty.
Right. That was just the first thing. That's what got me realizing that I didn't understand the proper role of government, and which that proper role of government by Azurtagh Benson was also one of those original things that I read that helped me start to understand those principles. And those things led me to create the websites that I created, because education is important, and I felt like there was this truth that I had discovered that just not very many people out there know about, and so I wanted to share it. And there was a lack of that information online, especially from a gospel perspective, which Benson and Skousen and others like Verlin Anderson,
David O. McKay and Gavin Clark, all those people. And so that's what's really neat about Latter-day Conservative is that you've got like every church leader's words on these principles. And so that way we can, because I know sometimes we talk about these things, sometimes we'll quote President Benson, and people are like, well, he was the only one. Everybody disagreed with him. And so we can go through there and show how it's a consistent message. All of the church leaders have talked about that and how important these principles of agency are.
Right. And if we don't understand those principles, how can we make the right decisions? How can we go and vote responsibly, or how can we stand behind certain laws if we don't understand the principles and don't understand what makes up a proper role of government?
It just becomes like this, just who can come up with a better argument. And if you don't understand the principles, then you just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then the next person that comes along with a better argument, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But if you're grounded on correct principle, then you're not just tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine, right? You can kind of really stay on the straight and narrow on these principles. So I wanted to go back to the thing that you mentioned about Davy Crockett and his story, and Not Yours to Give. And just kind of some preface, there were some votes going on in Congress about helping some people out and that were in need. And then after that vote, Davy Crockett goes back to his home district and starts to talk to some of his constituents and trying to, drum up support. And he began to talk to a guy and, introduce himself. And the guy says, "Yes, I know you. You are Colonel Crockett. I have seen you once before and voted for you the last time you were elected. I suppose you're out electioneering now, but you'd better not waste your time on mine. I shall not vote for you again." He says, "This was a sock doggler. I begged him to tell me what was the matter." He says, "Well, Colonel, it was hardly worthwhile to waste time on words upon it. I do not see how it can be mended, but you gave a vote last winter which shows that you either have not capacity to understand the Constitution or that you are wanting in the honesty and firmness to be guided by it. In either case, you are not the man to represent me, but I beg your pardon for expressing it in that way. I did not intend to avail myself of the privilege of the constituent to speak plainly to a candidate for the purpose of insulting or wounding you. I intend by it only to say that your understanding of the Constitution is very different from mine, and I will say to you what, for my rudeness, I should not have said, that I believe you to be honest, but an understanding of the Constitution different from mine I cannot overlook, because the Constitution, to be worth anything, must be held sacred and rigidly observed in all its provisions." So he thought, he said, "Colonel Crockett, you're a good guy, but you're just not going by the Constitution. And if we don't hold the Constitution sacred, our oath to that Constitution, then what else is it?" And so Davy Crockett responds. He says, "I don't remember, any votes that we had based on the Constitution. And so on the constitutional question, so what are you talking about?" And so the guy responds, "No, Colonel, there's no mistake. Though I live here in the backwoods and seldom go from home, I take the papers from Washington and read very carefully all the proceedings of Congress. My papers say that last winter you voted for a bill to appropriate $20,000 to some sufferers by a fire in Georgetown. Is that true?" He says, "Well, my friend, I might as well own up. You have got me there, but certainly nobody will complain that a great and rich country like ours should give the insignificant sum of $20,000 to relieve its suffering women and children, particularly with a full and overflowing treasury. And I am sure if you had been there, you would have done just as I did." And then the guy responds, "It is not the amount, Colonel, that I complain of. It is the principle. In the first place, the government ought to have in the treasury no more than enough for its legitimate purposes. But that has nothing to do with the question. The power of collecting and dispersing money at pleasure is the most dangerous power that can be entrusted to man, particularly under our system of collecting revenue by a tariff, which reaches every man in the country, no matter how poor he may be, and the poorer he is, the more he pays in proportion to his means. What is worse, it presses upon him without his knowledge where the weight centers, for there is not a man in the United States who can ever guess how much he pays to the government. So you see that while you are contributing to relieve one, you are drawing it from thousands who are even worse off than he. If you had the right to give anything, the amount was simply a matter of discretion with you, and you had as much right to give 20 million as 20,000. If you have the right to give to one, you have the right to give to all. And as the Constitution neither defines charity nor stipulates the amount, you are at liberty to give to any and everything which you may believe or profess to believe is a charity, and to any amount you may think proper. You will very easily perceive what is a wide door this would open for fraud and corruption and favoritism on the one hand, and for robbing the people on the other." So I think that gets to the point. I could read on, but I don't want to just bore everybody with just reading. But I think that gets to the point of why it is immoral for government to give to charity, and why we cannot support. That's just one idea of what government is doing, going beyond its bounds, and that's like it's almost, of all the egregious thing that government does, it's almost the least egregious, but it's fundamentally egregious that leads to all the other horrific things that government is doing because of that one violation of principle.
It's a perversion of charity, because government action is force,
right?
And forced charity is not charity at all. So unless you're willing to go steal from your neighbor to then give that money to the poor, then don't have your government do it for you.
Right. You can't delegate to somebody the power you yourself don't have. I think we got some people with some thoughts on this. 801-254-1640 is the number. Let's go to line 5 again. You're on K-Talk with Ben, Kevin, and Brian.
Hi. Yes, my name is Dan.
Hey, Dan.
I'm just calling really quickly to kind of put into perspective a few things. First of all, when Christ came into the world, he didn't bring just a religion. He brought a philosophy of a political philosophy, which is liberty and agency.
Mm-hmm.
And the closer we are to the views of Christ, the greater liberty we always believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that we are conservatives, basically you'll find that most conservatives are Christian, and the more Christian they are, the greater they believe in the values of liberty. And one of the reasons that we cannot support homosexuality is because the creator of the universe has already adjudicated that issue, and he called it an abomination.
Mm-hmm.
And it cannot be supported in view of the fact that he has already ruled against it.
Right.
And when we began to start voting against what he has already said, the judgments will come upon us. And I fear for the for this nation. I believe that we are probably on the verge of some very, very harsh realities that are going to come into the lives of a lot of people. And the problem is that it's not just the guilty that suffer, it's also people that are not guilty. And those that support these
Have you listened to our interview
values.
with Scott Lively? We did a couple of those about the history and the true intention of the gay supremacy movement.
Yes.
Yeah, and so it's really, I appreciate the call. I think we need to make sure and get the other callers a chance, but I think you make some really good points that the morality is essential to the liberty of our country and that there are consequences. And this same topic was brought up with in the last show, and how these things won't even be allowed to talk about if things allowed to continue as they are. And so to be able to promote liberty, we need to make sure and expose the corruption in this and help people understand why this is such a danger to our liberty. If you make sure you're either subscribing to our YouTube channel, but especially to our podcast through Spreaker or iTunes, because we did a podcast on the importance of morality, why morality matters to liberty, and you should go check that out. Just go to Spreaker or iTunes and search for Defending Utah and download that to your phone, because those are some really important topics to be able to get into. Let's go to line 3. You're on K-Talk with Ben, Kevin, and Brian.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You guys, I came from behind the Iron Curtain, stuck now behind the Zion's Curtain, but I got a question for you. Maybe
Okay.
you can answer.
Yeah.
This morning I tried to place it on the previous host, but it didn't get much response. In my opinion, Lincoln destroyed the Constitution and also established the new colonial policy of today's America. Do you think that I have a point there or not?
I would completely agree. Lincoln, the time during the Lincoln administration is one of the biggest rushes towards tyranny that we saw since the 1900s. I mean, that was like the biggest leap, and then we had a little bit of a lull, and you go to 1913 where you have some more giant leaps towards tyranny, and then you move forward to the Kennedy and what's his name, Johnson administration, and we've got some more giant leaps towards tyranny with the Social Security Acts and the Great Society and the War on Poverty, and then we go again to 9/11, and that's some more huge leaps towards tyranny. So yeah, there are definitely these periods of time where we become we take these giant leaps towards destroying the Constitution and implementing tyranny.
All right. Thank you for that. I had a hard time passing that idea, but it's evident. And what do you see today with America? Is America a republic like intended to be, or it's an imperium? It's an empire.
Oligarchy, I think, was maybe we'd call it today. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, empire works as well.
Well, there was I forgot, famous famous school did a study on today's status of the so-called republic, and they come to the conclusion that there is no republic, there is no democracy, it's a dictatorship.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say the United States is the new Roman Empire.
Well, thank you, guys.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it. Kind of a, I think, bold statement to say right now, because everybody's got their I love America, right? Their patriotism on. But I think right now, instead of being patriotic, we're becoming more national, like statist. We're not actually supporting principles like the Constitution. We're becoming more like our country, leave it or live it, love it or leave it.
Look at Trump's speech yesterday. I mean, how many military vehicles?
Unfortunately, I didn't. I mean, or fortunately, I didn't check it out.
I checked out about 5 minutes of it, and it was about all I could stand. But it was like a stealth bomber flies over, and then helicopters are flying, and it was just story after story about how we go around the world and we kick tail.
And that's like, it's the images that were being described that I did see after the fact were very like Soviet-esque, these.
And he was standing behind some bulletproof glass, and it was like all dirty, and so you couldn't.
Oh man,
I don't know. It just painted a picture of military dictatorship to me. At least that's the feeling that was conveyed.
Yeah. So maybe we should talk about that Abraham Lincoln. Maybe that's a side topic, but I think it's important to talk about sometimes. So we should, if we got time today, we can talk about it. But right now, I want to get back to what are some things we can actually do to preserve liberty. We're talking about every week. We talk about how Utah, especially, is working to destroy our liberties. But when we get back from the break, we're going to talk more about what can we do about it, because it doesn't do you a lot of good to know stuff if you're not going to do something about it.
Tired of bureaucrats and tyrannical government? Defending Utah knows how to fix that. It's called nullification. To find out more, stop by our office and pick up your pamphlet on nullification today. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, AndersonAccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, HigherCallingFirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, BlackLotusWebDev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and Kangen Water at championsneverquit.biz.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit GoNewSmile.com. That's GONU smile.com to revitalize your smile. New smile. It looks good on you.
Can't get enough Defending Utah Radio? Then follow us on Facebook and subscribe to Defending Utah's YouTube channel. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
Good Friday morning. This is Ben McClintock from DefendingUtah.org. So glad you've joined us this Friday, July 5th, 2019. It is 9:43 in the morning, and so glad you're listening to K-Talk, AM 1640. The call-in number is 801-254-1640, 801-254-1640. K-Talk is free speech radio. This is the only station in town that you can call in and have your voice heard. Make sure and spread the word. Follow us on Facebook, and make sure you're sharing the things to help people know about real free speech radio at K-Talk, AM 1640. Before the break, we were talking about the ways that things that got us into liberty, how we can start to preserve liberty. And, Brian, you were telling your story. We've got some callers you need to get to, but let's bring us forward. Kind of been kind of dragging on with that, and what got you into trying to work towards preserving liberty. You've got this great website, latterdayconservative.com. So kind of tell us the kind of continue on with the origin story.
Yeah. So we've already covered education, right?
Yeah.
You got to be educated before you actually go out and do something.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was creating the website, organizing events to educate others. I felt like, well, we're not going to get much done if there aren't very many people out there that are educated.
Mm-hmm.
We need a larger percentage of people that are awake to actually make a difference. So at the time, I was in college, and I started a college club, and that actually opened up a lot of opportunities to like organize big events, to make use of like the facilities at the college to bring in speakers and just become better organized in that regard.
That reminds me of how when I first started getting into this. I wasn't in college at the time. I was in my early 20s and started to wake up to what was going on, and I didn't know what to do about it. And so there was this pizza place in the town that I was living in that had this big screen TV. And so like every Thursday I would say, hey, can I schedule to use your TV to play some videos? And they're like, sure, go ahead. So every Thursday I'd play these Liberty movies to help people eating pizza learn more about liberty. And so I think whatever we can just look around us and find ways to be able to educate those around us, having speakers come in like you did, having a website, or just finding a place to be able to sometimes when you're alone, you're not sure what to do about it. You just kind of have to just shoot in the dark and be like, I hope this works, and just doing something. And then I think the Lord opens up other bigger and better, more effective things we can do.
Something I love about what your website does, Brian, I first tuned into you just watching YouTube videos that you had posted, and I love the way you educate people about the quotes from the prophets. So looking at the LDS perspective and some of the things that people don't realize were said. And for me, I know when I was running for city council, my campaign manager loved your site, and we had this one particular video you made that every morning, or every day that we worked on the campaign, we played it before we got started. It was like our inspirational.
It was your war cry?
Pretty much.
Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to line 5. If you want to be a part of the conversation, 801-254-1640. You're on live with Ben, Kevin, and Brian.
Hi, Ben.
Hey.
This is Tom in Bountiful.
Hey, Tom.
One of the really important ways to participate in, liberty, we all are told to get out and vote and participate politically, but the other real important fact is that we need to participate legally. What I'm saying is the courts have become star chamber courts. We don't have a trial by jury. We have a trial by an individual in a black cloak, in a mahogany box. Nobody else is there, and you can bring an accused individual into that courtroom, and they can just turn on the vacuum cleaner. He can be sucked away, and nobody will know about it.
Right.
So I tell people it's time to participate in the legal system right now. Anytime you have a friend or family member or an individual that you may care about, or even that you don't care about, do not ever allow them to go into that courtroom by themselves. Even though there may not be a jury called, you become a, quote, silent observant jury if you walk in with that friend who's being tried with a judge trial.
That's
right?
so true. I've noticed that going into when the judge, merely being a silent observer and watching what the judge does versus when the judge knows that he's being watched, people coming in to make sure that he's doing the right thing. The judge behaves totally differently.
Exactly.
Well, and when you understand the function of the jury and about jury nullification, and you get summonsed to come in and be jury duty for the day, do it.
Yeah.
And and try to get on the jury too, because like I was disappointed. I tried to get on a jury. There was a victimless crime. The state was prosecuting an individual, and he wasn't very bright. I mean, he wasn't being very bright. He was drunk driving, but he was the sober one of the two of them, and he wasn't driving erratically. And so I thought, man, I'm going to get on here and teach the state a thing or two, and I'm going to teach the jury a thing or two if I'm on there. But they cut the jury short to 4 people.
Weird.
Yeah, it's strange what they're doing, and I would have been picked. And so I was the only one that stuck around for the entire time, and the judge and the both of the attorneys were like, "What do you think? What would you have said?" And I was kind of holding back my opinion. I didn't want to tell them because I knew I knew they would not like what I had to say.
Sure.
But I met with all the jurors afterward, and I educated them.
Good.
And I also took the defendant out to lunch.
That's an important thing is people need to realize that as a juror, your right is not, and your duty is not to just decide guilt or innocence, but to decide the justness of the law.
That's right. You can nullify bad laws on a jury.
Yep.
You decide, in this instance, is this law even applicable, or is the law applicable at all?
So if you're liberty-minded, don't get out of jury duty. We need you on the juries. So, hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Hey, can I just say, thanks to Tom, the last caller. He was actually indirectly one of the people that helped me wake up.
Oh,
so
awesome.
my brother-in-law had shared his website with me, and Tom was running as a candidate for the Constitution Party at the time. And that was the first time I'd ever even heard of the Constitution Party. So I was reading Tom's website, and that led me down this rabbit hole to all this information.
And that's the thing, is we don't realize how big our reach is. We don't realize who we affected and what they did with that information.
Well, I don't think that website's there anymore, but I do thank Tom for being one of those people that's actually doing something about these problems facing our world today.
Let's go to 4. You've been patient with us. You're on K-Talk with Ben, Kevin, and Brian.
Hello. This is Lisa. Hey,
Lisa.
I'm enjoying your show. Thank you so much for having your guest on today, because he's bringing up some good points. But the fight that we have to go through to get anything done in this state or in this country is such. It's like Mount Everest 100 times a million climb to get it cleaned up. And I got to reading the other day, and I've talked about this before, but the group called ALEC, American Legislative Executive Council, and then the Council on Foreign Relations, and here locally, Wasatch Regional Council. All these councils people are making all the rules, all the laws, and they are subjecting us to tax, even if some of them have good intentions. But when it all comes about, they've all been somewhat corrupted, and they stifle any efforts to for the average person who's pretty much dumbed down, and even if they know what's going on, they're wore out from working 2 jobs. And this is a really, really hard fight. When I explained to someone the other day, I said, well, the people that we elect in Congress, most of them haven't even read the stuff that they're passing, because it's purposely written in such a fashion that you almost have to be a lawyer to figure out what the heck they're saying.
Well, there's so many bills and they're so long, it's impossible to read them.
Yeah, and it's done specifically on purpose. The thing about the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and all the things that our forefathers have done for us, it was well thought out, and the Constitution, I think, is like 20-something pages, if it's that. And so things, the more complex they become, the more difficult to climb to the top to clean out the mess, to get to the top of the mountain, to punch the button, to get rid of everything, is so horrible. The only thing you can do is try to, when you find something egregious, which I do frequently when I go around my business and doing things, is I tell everyone, this is what it's going to do for you.
Sunlight
is
is
what
the
it's going to
best
hurt you.
disinfectant. We need to expose stuff. That's wonderful. Thanks so much, Lisa, for the call.
Thank you. I'd just like to have your guest ask him this one question. What can we do about all of these groups of people that are and some of them are good and a lot of them are horrible, that are writing all of these laws, and we don't even know. Where can we find out how to get into that? I mean, do we just pick out one subject and go that route, or what would you suggest we do? And I'm going to hang up and listen to your comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Brian, go ahead.
That's a good question. Actually, I used to study under Cleon Skousen, and one of the things he brought up was what can we do?
Yeah.
And even to a group of BYU students, he was telling them that this is an educational problem, that we don't meet at the armory. We beat this thing by education and exposure, and also by joining with groups of people who are trying to do the right thing. And that's one of the reasons.
Like defendingutah.org.
That's what I was just going to say. That's why I'm associated with defendingutah.org. I'm a member of it, and I find them to be the only group that I'm aware of that's completely principle based and doesn't compromise on those principles. And we need to join with groups like that to make a difference, whether that's within our neighborhoods or within our community. And I'm sure Ben could talk more about what Defending Utah is doing in that regard.
Well, you talk about education being so important. That's one of the major problems we have. Thomas Jefferson, the founding fathers, they were the ones that did everything, and Thomas Jefferson, even though they did have to go to another level, he explained how important education was. He says, educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance on the preservation of our liberty. And so that's the fundamental thing we have going on is because everybody's being propagandized. And so we need to, those that understand the truth need to spend, it's Doctrine and Covenants 123. We need to waste and wear out our lives exposing the hidden things of darkness. We have to bring these things to light. I like what Lisa said. Of what she does is, using sunlight as the disinfectant. We need to expose the stuff.
Well, and a small light shines very brightly in a very dark room. And right now, the room is extremely dark. So you can be a light to your friends just with small comments that you might think are insignificant.
Let's be real quick. We just got a few minutes left before the break. So let's go to line 3. Caller, you're on K-Talk with Ben, Kevin, and Brian.
Sorry to double dip, but I got one more suggestion
Real
to
quick.
the public.
Yeah, please.
If you'll go to meadowsfire.com, right away you'll see a link to where I speak before the Bountiful City Council. And I'm literally reporting on what I was observing in the court. That is one thing else you do. You not only become a court watcher or a court witness, but also report what you see. One of the powerful ways to do that is to go to the jurisdiction which has, somewhat regulatory power over that court. And I took a 2-minute opportunity in the Bountiful City Court Council meeting to report on the lack of judiciary integrity in that court. So please, when you get a chance, every time you get a chance to go to court, make sure that what you observe becomes public. And one of the powerful ways to do that is to take advantage of that citizen input in a city council meeting.
Perfect. We've been encouraging people to do that a lot because that is one of the things that we see is in the city councils is where people's liberty is being destroyed the most because they're the ones meeting the most often. At least the legislature's only a couple of 3 months out of the year.
They blew up a bunch of liberty last night.
I'm burning people's tax dollars.
They burn it fast.
They were actually playing on K-Talk this morning. They played a guy that was in charge of one of the fireworks shows, and he says, "If I'm not burning $10,000 a minute, I'm wasting my time."
Oh yeah, I went to the Clearfield one last night. It was incredibly good, but also incredibly bad.
Incredibly bad. We've got a couple of callers. I'm going to ask you to be patient. I want you to hold on through the break, please. We want to hear from you at K-Talk AM 1640, 801-254-1640. 801-254-1640 is the number to call, and we'll be right back after the news.
Hey, wanted to talk to you about our new book that has actually already gotten a really, really good response, and I'm really excited about this. This is an important book, even if I do say so myself, that those that are that need to understand principles of liberty and that are interested in these things needs to get a hold of. It's our new book right here, The Proper Role of Government, a 21st Century Manifesto for Good Government. Now, what this does is it reprints the original talk by Ezra Taft Benson, The Proper Role of Government, and then we go through the 15 principles that he lays out in The Proper Role of Government, and one by one show their origins. What did the Founding Fathers say about them? What are examples of living them? What are examples of applying them? And how can we do this today? And so this is, since The Proper Role of Government itself has been out of print for a while, this is a book for anybody that is interested in these things, remembers loving the talk, and wants to be able to help themselves as well as those around them understand these principles and be able to start to organize with other people to be able to actually now start to implement these principles. And so go to defendingutah.org and click on the store tab and pick up your copy of The Proper Role of Government, a 21st Century Manifesto for Good Government. How to do it today. Proper Role of Government, a 21st Century Manifesto for Good Government. This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, blacklotuswebdev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and Kangen Water at championsneverquit.biz.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit gonewsmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit gonewsmile.com. That's GONU smile.com to revitalize your smile. New smile. It looks good on you.
This is Freedom Friday from defendingutah.org, where we think right and wrong, not right and left, right here on K-Talk AM 1640. The call-in number to be part of the conversation, 801-254-1640, the only station in town that allows you to have your voice heard, 801-254-1640. Make sure and tell all of your friends to be tuning in to K-Talk, as well as Defending Utah Radio, of course. And make sure and follow K-Talk on Facebook. Make sure to subscribe to the Defending Utah podcast on Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and make sure and that you are sharing these things with your friends, because it doesn't do you any good to just be the only one that knows this stuff.
Well, and the podcast just got 1,000 times better because Ben's posting regularly.
We try to do it this week because of the holiday week. We did a little bit less, but we are trying to do about every day. And so there is new content all of the time, and we're going to be doing a lot of great stuff. So let's go back to the phone lines. People were awesome enough to hold over through the break, and so I want to get to those phone lines. You're on K-Talk with Ben, Kevin, and Ben.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
So just as a slight spin to your discussion, probably not off topic, but in order for me to be transparent, I have to tell you first that I'm also a Palestinian American. And when it comes to people running for office, whether it is presidential candidate or somebody who's running for, state or local or Congress, whatever, I always go and research how much money they got from AIPAC and various Israeli lobbies. And when there is money given to these candidates in order for them to, make it to that office, I scratch them right there. That's not a representative of me. That's not somebody who's going to put America first. And that's probably someone who puts a foreign entity ahead of our country. Very simple.
Yeah, I think that's
my point.
We have to make sure and have our own little checklist of things that we're like, okay, how's this guy
going to be presenting, going to be representing us or representing the principles of liberty. I hope you'll contact us through info@defendingutah.org. We'd love to have more perspectives from Palestinian point of view. I don't think that's represented enough on.
Well, and I'm very
radio.
Interested what the caller thinks about.
Very kind of you. Very kind of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Very interested what the caller thinks about all the Israeli nationals that are in our State Department.
Oh, he didn't stay on the air. That's okay. Maybe we can have him on or have somebody else on that can talk about that. But I think it's very important that we look into those things. But Kevin.
Yes.
We were going to introduce the next topic.
Oh well, I was gonna ask you a question. Every year the Republican Party has this Lincoln Day dinner, and there's also this. I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but that Tim Hawkins video, like the government can, and then they show the founding fathers rolling over in their grave, and then they show Lincoln, and a lot of people they lump, and then you got like, they lump Lincoln in with the founding fathers. And what's your opinion of that, Brian?
Wasn't Lincoln a vampire slayer?
One of the best movies that Hollywood ever produced.
Oh, one thing I recall is Brigham Young was a contemporary of Lincoln, and he didn't like Lincoln.
So there's a guy by the name of Thomas DiLorenzo. If anybody hasn't read his book, The Real Abraham Lincoln, they should. He's got lots of videos that talk about the things that there's, of course, there's the saying is that the victors write the history books. And so we need to go through and look at what it is that, what's the real history? What did the people that lost the battle say? Why were they in the battle in the first place?
Yeah, if you love the Constitution and you believe in defending it, then you should really look twice at Lincoln because he shredded it. Left and right.
Look at the history and understand how when the erosion of the Constitution first started happening. And I like to look at contemporaries and what did they say? What were their experiences with him? And the early saints were heavily involved, of course, in Illinois because that's, Nauvoo was in Illinois. And so they had a lot of direct communication. They had a lot of direct work with Lincoln himself. And so Brigham Young actually had a lot of things to say about Lincoln. I'm going to go through some of the things that Brigham Young had to say about him and help us to get a better understanding of who he really was. So Brigham Young said, Abe Lincoln was no friend of Christ. Particularly, he had never raised his voice in our favor when he was aware that we were being persecuted. He was acquainted with Joseph and Hiram and had been a master Freemason. Okay? So that's the one thing is that he wasn't a friend of Christ. Everybody talks about how he thought we should be on God's side, but he was never a defender of people that were being oppressed. He, basically is what Brigham Young is saying here is he basically was on the sidelines watching people get oppressed.
Well, and think about if slavery was such a big important thing for him, he's supposed to be the great emancipator. He was in favor of the Fugitive Slave Act, which was the most atrocious thing that many states had to nullify and pass their own laws against the Fugitive Slave Act. That said that if you owned slaves and they escaped to a free state, that you could go to those states and extract your slave back home to slavery. So even though they had escaped to a free state in the north, that you would be supported by the feds in going to do that. And so that's why many states like Wisconsin had to pass their own laws opposing that,
nullifying it.
Yeah, nullifying that. Just like states today, like Colorado, are passing laws to nullify unconstitutional federal drug laws.
Right, and 21 states nullifying national ID laws. So nullification is important. So another thing that Brigham Young said, he says, Old Abe, the President of the United States, has it in his mind to pitch into us when he had got through with the South. So meaning he was going to go after Utah after he was done with the South. President Kimball observed that men that had been that he had met with, whether they had little or much of the Spirit of God, were in favor of the South. So we can see where they stood there. That, of course, that what did they say with the twin relics of barbarism? And so Abe Lincoln had his sights set on us after he was done with the South, but didn't have an opportunity to. Another thing that Brigham Young said was Stephen A. Douglas was far better man than President Abe Lincoln, for he knew his feelings were hostile to this people. President Wells acquiesced to these remarks. The office, and then another time he says, if the kingdom of God was not in the way, Abraham was a pretty good man, but he acted as if he would rather the kingdom of God was out of the way. He was not the man to raise his voice in favor of Joseph Smith when his enemies were persecuting him. He, with many others, had assented to the deaths of innocent men, and through that he is subject to the influence of a wicked spirit. And so because of that, these were things, people will say there's a guy that goes on the circuit in Utah that tries to defend Lincoln, that he repented of his ways. But no, he never actually said that he was wrong to have acquiesced to the death of Joseph and Hiram. And he never went and back to support those things that he allowed to happen under his watch. And that he continued throughout his presidency to go after. People say that there was this Cold War between Lincoln and Brigham. Lincoln had his sights on Utah after he was done with the South.
Well, and how many innocents were killed in the Civil War? And literally, like Sherman, and when
there was no civil, the war between the states.
Yeah, the war between the states. It wasn't civil at all. I mean, it was incredibly bloody, and many innocents died. And Lincoln was, he wasn't apologetic about it. He was vicious with the war, and all the unconstitutional actions that he took against his political opponents before the war even started. And the guy was a political animal. He was cruel, and I'm sad to say that he's in my genealogy, frankly. I could go on.
So in 1861, Brigham Young said, the feelings of the brethren are gratified by hearing of the continued success which attends the Southern Confederacy. So
that is a cool quote.
There's another one. He says, we need not expect anything sensible from them, for the spirit of wisdom is taken away from them. He remarked that President Lincoln and Congress appear not to realize that there is a war on hand. It is not so with the South. They are keen and alive. And so they were aware of what was going on. They weren't like in this little bubble, not aware of the things that were happening back in D.C. or with the nation in general.
Well, Ben, you must be for slavery.
Oh, of course. Yes.
They've done a good job of,
because if I'm against government schools, that means I'm against educating children.
And that's what I learned in my government school, was that the war was about slavery. Absolutely, it was about slavery. That's what our history professor said, and it was not about slavery. It was about secession and the right to secede. It was about sovereignty of the states. And since that war, since losing that war, the federal government is much more powerful, and like you mentioned, there have been several other events since then.
People don't know about, you talked about how the Republican Party has this Lincoln Day dinner every year, and people don't realize the Republican Party and Abraham Lincoln are linked inseparably to the communists. It was actually the Illuminists under the direction, not under direction, but let me reverse that. So it was the communists under the direction of the Illuminists that were actually behind the creation of the Republican Party, nationally speaking, and were the ones that recruited Lincoln to running. And so it was actually a part of the international conspiracy to destroy liberty that started Lincoln's path towards political office, and he had them as his master. And so we have today, you have there was the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, and it's a communist organization. You have it's always of course, you always hear about it's always the statists and the big government people that are always talking about Lincoln. It's the the Antifa movement. They never were going after Lincoln. What's it called? All of the people, they're going after the Confederacy monuments. The establishment is going after those things that are that went against Lincoln, because Lincoln was the establishment's man.
And to those that say that he was a great emancipator and that it was about slavery, the Civil War, the war of Northern Aggression, excuse me. To those that say that, Ron Paul likes to bring up an interesting point, and that is that with the money they spent on the war, they could have bought and freed the slaves. If not all of them, then the majority of them.
Right. And so it's important for us to understand that history, and so that we can start to weed through the propaganda. Why is it that the mainstream focuses so much on promoting Lincoln? We've got all of the Lincoln Day activities, but you don't see any Washington Day activities. You don't see anything on founding fathers that were actually, a founding father. We're promoting people that were long afterwards and that were the antithesis of the founding fathers. We have Independence Day. What did we just celebrate? And that's why I talk about how it's not a civil war. It was states saying, you know what, let's part ways. Let's just kind of, we've had a good run at it. Let's go ahead and declare independence. And going against the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, Lincoln then prevented them from a peaceful divorce, a peaceful political divorce, saying, we've had our go at it, and we want to stop. And he said, no, not going to happen. More on this when we get back from the break right here on K-Talk AM 1640.
Yes, come bash Lincoln with
bureaucrats
us.
and tyrannical government? Defending Utah knows how to fix that. It's called nullification. To find out more, stop by our office and pick up your pamphlet on nullification today. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, blacklotuswebdev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and Kangen Water at championsneverquit.biz.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit GoNewSmile.com. That's GONU smile.com to revitalize your smile. New Smile. It looks good on you.
The sun's finally out, so get out there and enjoy. And don't forget to bring along the refreshing sound of K-Talk Media, 1640 AM.
Sundance Spa's Mega Ducky Days deals going on now. Come see the new Sundance lineup and get factory rebates on all series spas. Huge deals are happening right now at Backyards of America, with spas starting at just $5,995 with complete packages, including cover filter, deluxe steps, startup chemicals, and delivery and setup. Financing available. Come see us. We're 2 blocks south of 90th on the East Side Frontage Road off the I-15 freeway. Look for our 20-foot tall ducky or online at backyardsofamerica.com. Hurry in before the Duck Day deals fly south.
I don't mean to brag, kid, but I'm a pretty healthy guy. Running a growing business means I'm always running. Not many can keep up with me. But you know who can? Grainger. When it comes to getting me the answers I need right when I need them, Grainger moves just as fast as I do. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're a good running partner, because no matter what problem I have or question, Grainger's got my back. Call, click Grainger.com, or stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Howdy, folks. Colonel Sanders here. Folks keep asking me how KFC can afford to fit 2 pieces of Kentucky Fried Chicken, taters and gravy, a biscuit, a medium drink, and a cookie into my KFC $5 fill-ups and still sell them for just $5. Well, I saved a little money by only paying for 25 seconds of this here 30-second commercial. KFC, it's finger-licking good. At participating KFCs for a limited time. Prices may vary. Tax extra. Extra charge for breast piece and side item substitution may apply.
The weekend is coming, and you need to plan a date night. You could go to a movie and dinner, but there's nothing original about that. Here's a new and exciting idea. Take your date indoor shooting at the Armory Gun Range. Instead of renting a bowling lane or playing miniature golf, yay, you can rent a shooting lane at the Armory Gun Range. Impress your spouse or your date with your original plan. The Armory can provide both guns and ammo, and rookies are welcome.
I would be excited if my boyfriend took me shooting. The Armory is located in Sandy at 9210 South and 248 West. The phone number is 801-447-1789. Again, that is 801-447-1789. You can also check out their website at armoryshootingrange.com. The range is open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
The Armory Gun Range, blowing holes in boring date nights.
Can't get enough Defending Utah Radio? Then follow us on Facebook and subscribe to Defending Utah's YouTube channel. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
We're getting rid of sacred cows here. And right here on K-Talk AM 1640, this is Ben McClintock from DefendingUtah.org, where we think right and wrong, not right and left.
Kill the cow, kill the cow.
And we are talking, here in studio with Kevin Paulson.
Hello.
And Brian Meekum from LatterdayConservative.com.
Hey.
And we are right here on K-Talk AM 1640. You want to be part of the conversation, give us a call, 801-254-1640. And we've been slaughtering the sacred cow of Abraham Lincoln. And we had a caller off the air ask about a book to learn about the things that we've been talking about. And we wanted to, again, we'll just tell you over the air as well. The book that I really recommend is The Real Lincoln by Thomas De Lorenzo. That's D-I-L-O-R-E-N-Z-O. The Real Lincoln. And so
that's for those of you that think that the last Hollywood movie, last Hollywood fiction on Lincoln is true.
Well, there was actually a really telling moment that he actually quoted from, a real quote from Lincoln, and Lincoln said that people were complaining about the things that he were doing was unconstitutional. That's not just us saying that. That was common in his day. And he said, well, because the people are the arbiters of what's constitutional, them re-electing me meant everything I was doing was legal.
I have a mandate. You ever heard that before?
Oh, yeah. And so that was the mindset of you could violate the Constitution because the people supported you through their election. And you go through, and there's, Brian, you mentioned during the break as well, that if you go on YouTube, you look up any of Thomas De Lorenzo's videos on Lincoln, but also Stephen Pratt, who studied underneath Cleon Skousen. He did some great videos about the war between the states that would talk about Lincoln and the truth about what he was doing.
Yeah, if you look for Stephen Pratt's,
and that's a PH, Stephen, not a V, Stephen.
I think that was part of the 3 Foundings of America video series. One of those videos, he talks about Abraham Lincoln basically destroying the Constitution to save the country.
That reminds me of the banking, the bailout crisis. So we got to destroy capitalism, to save it. And so, just talking about contemporaries, the people that saw the effects of Abraham Lincoln's things, and Brigham Young had a lot of things. We've quoted a lot from from Brigham Young about Abraham Lincoln. I want to share some other quotes from him right here. This is recorded by Wilford Woodruff. He says, I will see them in hell before I will raise an army for them. Abe Lincoln has sent these men here to prepare the way for an army. An order has been sent to California to raise an army to come to Utah. This is the reason why Ball came back. I pray daily that the Lord will take away the reins of government of the wicked rulers and put it in the hands of wise and good. I will see the day when those wicked rulers are wiped out. The governor quoted my sayings about the Constitution. I do and always have supported the Constitution, but I am not in league with such cursed scoundrels as Abe Lincoln and his minions. Repeat that. I am not in league with such cursed scoundrels as Abe Lincoln and his minions. They have sought our destruction from the beginning, and Abe Lincoln has ordered an army to this territory from California, and that order passed over on these wires. And then again he says, Brigham Young discussed with him the wicked course the American nation had taken with this people, observing the government was running into a despotism, and they were willing the government should be despotic while they were in power. The president observed that Abraham Lincoln was a sagacious man, but believed he was wicked. So the people that knew Abe Lincoln, that had to deal with him as the saints did, realized that the truth that we've been talking about with the history of Abe Lincoln being a very destructive force to American liberty and to the Constitution. And why is that important? Abe Lincoln's dead, right? He's not in power anymore. But I think it's important for us to understand the history. That's why I think that we hear the establishment always pushing Abe Lincoln, is because it is important to their agenda to prop him up as this great liberator of people. Because if we can worship him in that way, if we can look upon him in this way of a liberator, we will see what he did to destroy liberty in America as a good thing, and that we need to continue on the path of the destruction of the Constitution, because that's what Lincoln did. And so I think that's why it's one of the main reasons why it's so important to them to promote Lincoln, and that's why it's so important for us to understand who Lincoln was, and so that we can start to see how we went down the path to destroy liberty in America. And it goes back a lot further than people really realize. I don't know. There's a lot more to really talk about Lincoln. I mean, we can kind of maybe we can have Thomas DiLorenzo on as a guest sometime. That'd be an interesting conversation. But I think it's important not just to say, because then that's just opinion, right? You can go back and forth of, Lincoln freed the slaves, which he didn't do, but that's the line that's given out there. And then we can say, okay, well, look at what he did against the Constitution. So some people will say, well, that was necessary to preserve the Union. Sometimes some horrible things had to be done for the good in the long run. But if we can look at what the contemporary said of what people that a lot of us believe was a prophet, and what he said about Lincoln as a contemporary can help us to understand what really happened, so that way we can kind of weed through the who has the better argument. Going back to what's the principle?
Yeah, I'm interested to hear from the audience. Why do you think it was so important to preserve the Union? Because, I'm sure that was a similar argument that came from Britain when we were seceding from Britain.
It was almost the same exact argument, actually, and they were there was accusations flying against the founders that they were in a conspiracy to declare independence, and so they were being accused always of this, of being treasonous against the union.
A conspiracy theorist,
man. Exactly. And that's what they were pushing back in the day, was this idea that the founders were conspiring against the crown, which they were. But was that a bad thing?
That's a good conspiracy.
It's like a surprise birthday party. Is that really technically a conspiracy?
Yeah, I think in order to be a true conspiracy, it has to be a real conspiracy. It has to be evil,
right? For evil intentions. And so the fact that these people met in secret, of course they had to meet in secret. Of course they couldn't have their true intentions made. But like you said, the same idea of separating themselves from England is exactly what was going on during the days of the war between the states. And the idea that, of course England said that, no, you can't leave. And so they used force to make them stay. And then, of course, the central government was very upset with the idea that states would want to leave, and so they went and used force to try and compel them to stay. And the results, for good or for evil, was very different than the war between us and England. And we can see how the history has been written to reflect the two different things. In America, of course, we have why we celebrate Independence Day from England is celebrated much differently than the idea of what was happening between the northern states and the southern states during the 1860s. And so I think it's important for us to start to realize and think back and not just follow the emotional propaganda of what's behind that war between the states. And if we are celebrating war for independence, we should also be supportive of the idea that if a state like Utah or California, there's a big movement in California called Calexit, right? And if they want to leave the Union, more power to them.
Yeah, the state of Jefferson.
The state, well, that's just a state. That's not, well, it'd be secession from a state.
Part of the movement, right? So,
but not actually leave the country. So you've got, Calexit's like the liberal answer. They're like, oh, we're so mad about Trump.
Oh, is that?
We want to leave the United States. Not just form another state.
Right.
They want to leave the country. The state of Jefferson, they just want
to secede from California.
And so if California wants to leave the Union, hot dog.
If we had been following the Constitution, that wouldn't even matter because California would be, California should be sovereign and
Right.
the federal government shouldn't have as much power as it has over the states anyways.
That's a good point, is that we are, we talked about this on our show on Tuesday. If you listen in, we substituted on the state sovereignty hour. The idea that the United States of America was a nation is a completely foreign idea. It was never thought of that way until after the war between the states. Thomas Jefferson called himself a Virginian, not an American. And so we should be thinking of ourselves as Utahns, not as Americans. We support the Constitution because of the principles that it enshrines, but we are not saying that we need to defend that the idea of an empire of America, right or wrong. Just love it or leave it, basically. I mean, and the idea of love it or leave it is pretty humorous because the United States has been apostatizing from the Constitution for a long. I mean, even prior to the war between the states, you go back to the 1840s, and the persecution against the saints led Joseph Smith to and the Council of 50 to figure out: do we got to go to the Republic of Texas? Do we go out west to California? And then finally, after the martyrdom, you go to 1847. We're coming up with the Pioneer Days coming up is actually a celebration of the pioneers separating themselves from the United States because as early as the 1840s, we had to leave America to be able to go by the principles of the Constitution because America had apostatized from the Constitution. And so the idea that we can just leave it, once we left the United States, then the United States just invaded us again and claimed us as their own. And so the idea of love it or leave it, it just doesn't apply.
In our lovely Deseret, where the saints of God have met.
And I think as we get through the month of July, we're going to be doing a lot more shows on that idea and what was actually going on to help people understand that we are coming up, not on Pioneer Day, we are coming up on Deseret Independence Day. And so the idea that we need to really respect the idea of the Declaration of Independence. We've got some folks that are wanting to chime in on the conversation. If you want to be a part of this, 801-254-1640, 801-254-1640 is the number. Let's go to line 5. You're on K-Talk with Ben, Evan, and Brian.
Hey, Ben, Evan, and Brian.
Hey.
Hey, this is Prepper Talk, right?
This is not Prepper Talk. This is Defending Utah Radio.
We do talk about
prepping. Okay, cool.
Though.
Well, I'd rather get a hold of you guys anyway. It said Prepper Talk on your TuneIn app, and I was going, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, but okay, I'll go with it. So you're the gentleman that I want to talk to, and let me tell you why. Because I've made a trip to Portland, Oregon, and let's just say I helped some officials go into hiding, and I've dealt with Antifa up there.
Oh, they had those big things this weekend where they were throwing cement milkshakes at people.
That's not milkshakes. It's quick-drying cement.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah. That's what I said. It was cement milkshakes. It was made out of cement.
Yeah. So let me tell you from my personal interaction with them. Number one, you cannot get a concealed carry permit in Oregon unless you're around the 4 surrounding states, the border them, or you're a resident. But it is an open carry state, and if you can make sense out of this, please do, because I can't. So you can carry an unarmed gun. no ammo anywhere near it, none in the clip, none in the chamber, so you can have an empty firearm and carry it. So
basically like a billy club.
I went up there, and I got into a scuffle because they were attacking some older people.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, I don't know why. Honestly, I don't know why, but I'm not the type that just sits back. We got into a scuffle. I got a few good bruises from it, a brick that hit me in my back. The guy began to charge me with the crowbar. Their favorite weapon of choice is crowbars. And thank God I took my knife with me. And actually, it's one that I had while I did service in the Army. I kept it. And I looked at him. I got up, pulled it out. I said, come on. And he ran. They're cowards. They hit you from behind. You pull their masks off. They're cowards. But why I'm calling and telling you all this is the scary part is they're growing in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
If they become as big as they are in Portland, we all better be prepared. And thank God we have a very good concealed weapons permit class that covers 37 states. I know that...
And if you open carry, you can actually have your gun loaded.
Yeah. And I know the other host on this, he's ex-military.
Yep, Micah,
Yep, Micah. But I just want to let you guys know because of how dangerous they are. They don't know who I am, and they were ready to cave my skull in.
Mm-hmm.
They have caved the skull in on another individual. And I want to bring everybody's attention. They're getting more and more people from Utah joining it. I haven't seen any damage done by them yet in this state, but I'm paying attention to too much stuff. I'm paying attention to what's going on in D.C., what's being uncovered about the FISA abuses. I'm trying to make sure that Mitt Romney doesn't get reelected or John Curtis. They're not Republican or conservative in any way. They're both
Mitt Romney came out in favor of Antifa on Twitter. It's pretty. I mean, he's insane.
Yeah, he is. You know what? And he thinks that he can. And let me tell you, that's funny. I've got to bring this up. He continues to use his LDS affiliation to prove what a good person he is. And I go after people all the time. Do not judge the LDS people because of that idiot. He does not represent anybody within the church. And for you to do that is like me to judge because you're a college student. You're an Antifa terrorist. So think about it. Do not judge LDS people by it. So for some weird reason, Mitt Romney is the gold standard to judge every LDS member by, which is insanity. But, you know,
they going to a hard break. I need to cut you off right there. Appreciate the call. We've got more callers, more back when we get back from the break on K-Talk AM 1640.
Can't get enough Defending Utah Radio? Then follow us on Facebook and subscribe to Defending Utah's YouTube channel. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
Hey, wanted to talk to you about our new book that has actually already gotten a really, really good response, and I'm really excited about this. This is an important book, even if I do say so myself, that those that are that need to understand principles of liberty and that are interested in these things needs to get a hold of. It's our new book right here, The Proper Role of Government, a 21st Century Manifesto for Good Government. Now, what this does is it reprints the original talk by Ezra Taft Benson, The Proper Role of Government, and then we go through the 15 principles that he lays out in The Proper Role of Government, and one by one show their origins. What did the Founding Fathers say about them? What are examples of living them? What are examples of applying them? And how can we do this today? And so this is, since The Proper Role of Government itself has been out of print for a while, this is a book for anybody that is interested in these things, remembers loving the talk, and wants to be able to help themselves as well as those around them understand these principles and be able to start to organize with other people to be able to actually now start to implement these principles. And so go to defendingutah.org and click on the store tab and pick up your copy of The Proper Role of Government, a 21st Century Manifesto for Good Government. How to do it today. Proper Role of Government, a 21st Century Manifesto for Good Government. And make sure and get copies for yourself. Share them. Make sure and get copies for other people, so that way we can start to really build a culture and a society that understands and is working to apply these things. This is just a must-have book for every lover of liberty.
Alrighty, yes. Please pick up that book. Again, this is Ben McClintock with, we got Kevin Paulson.
Hello.
And Brian Meekum from LatterdayConservative.com.
Hey.
And we've been talking about the history of the independence and the history of liberty and some of the attacks on it, from Abraham Lincoln to the Patriot Act to today. And we've gotten some good responses on that. We've got some more folks that want to chime in. Let's go to the phone lines. If you want to be a part of the conversation, 801-254-1640 is the number. 801-254-1640 is the number. And let's go to the phone line. You're on K-Talk with Ben, Kevin, and Brian. Hello. We had a technical difficulty. Please call back, caller. And if you want to give us a call, 801-254-1640 is the number, 254-1640. All right, line 5, you're on K-Talk with Ben, Kevin, and Brian.
What do you think it's going to take to get our country back to the Constitution? We have, the more you read the Constitution, the more you're just so amazed on how far we've steered away from it.
That's for sure.
I mean, according to the Constitution, half of our military is unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't have an army. We shouldn't have the Marines. We shouldn't have a National Guard. All of these people are it's up to, for 2 years at the maximum.
Right.
The money's to be appropriated by Congress for this stuff. We're only supposed to have a Navy.
Just a Navy, yep. Yeah, the founding fathers spoke heavily against a standing army. They thought it was atrocious, and they can stall our day in what we're dealing with today of this idea of a tyranny through the standing army.
The bureaucracy that comes with it. I don't know. I just I think we need to hold our sheriffs accountable. Our sheriffs should be going in and arresting these politicians on a daily basis. Our prisons should be full of politicians.
That's the thing. I think it's so funny. All these talking about, and this is going to be a controversial thing for me to say, is that my freedoms aren't in a different country. My freedoms aren't somewhere in the Middle East. If our military today was defending liberty, they would be doing what you just said. Because I've never had anybody in the Middle East try and take away my freedom, but I've had more property stolen from the government than I've ever had from a common burglar or thug.
The concealed weapons permit, unconstitutional.
The permits, just yesterday, the permits to light off fireworks to celebrate your freedom. It's just, the irony is just incredible.
Oh, that's a whole other animal, the fireworks thing. But yeah, I think we should give lawnmowers to the firefighters. When they got downtime, 2 firefighters from every station should pick a space and go mow some sagebrush. But instead of sitting there worrying about buying steaks for the kitchen. Yeah, we got some big problems. I mean, the churches themselves too. I mean, these churches. That young man got stabbed out there in Maverick down at. So that's another. Where was he from? And how did he get in this country? That gentleman who, not gentleman, that animal savage who put the knife in that kid. How did he get in this country? I'd love to do follow that. See how he got into Salt Lake City.
I heard about the stabbing. I didn't hear about who did it. I remember the story about, I guess, the guy that killed
he had some. It wasn't no American name. It was definitely from. I don't know where he's from, but he was not an American name, and I think these churches are 99% of the problem, and I'm talking all of them.
Mm-hmm. These are made up of people. I appreciate the call. And I think going back to your original question of, well, what do you do about it? That's kind of like what we started the program with, is so many of us are just so brainwashed by the mainstream media, by the media, meaning movies, music, and what's the so-called news. And it's been propaganda since the very beginning. James Callender, one of the first propagandists, was the one that started the rumor about Thomas Jefferson raping one of his black slaves. And it was in revenge because Thomas Jefferson didn't appoint him to his cabinet. And so the media has been a propaganda division of the people trying to destroy liberty since, for forever. That's been their job forever. And so the first thing we've got to do is to be able to countermand that. We've got to, I believe that an ounce of truth will outwin a pound of lies. And so we've got to be as diligent as we can to be able to overcome that with the truth out there. And I think the way we do things at Defending Utah, we've been able to, just with our small numbers and just with our small reach here on K-Talk even, been able to do more than other organizations that have more of an outreach, because the truth rings true with people. And when you get the truth to people, that spreads like wildfire. The Founding Fathers call these brush fires of freedom. Because of an article we did. An article. They had to hold an emergency meeting at the state capitol with all of the sheriffs and the UHP guys there to calm everybody down and trying to overcome the truth that we were spreading. And so we are scaring them. Defending Utah has more subscribers to our YouTube channel, more listeners than any other Utah-based liberty organization out there. Activists. We've got more people engaged on our listening to our programs. We've got more people engaged in social media. Even though the mainstream media is trying to ignore us and trying to promote other people, because people like the truth, it's being able to spread where it's trying to be silenced. And so I think that's the first thing we have to do is educate ourselves, stop listening to the propaganda, get rid of all of the media that is getting us to believe the lies out there, and then start to actually study for ourselves, not depend on other people to give us the truth and be able to find out what's going on for ourselves, and then do what we do with Defending Utah, join with Defending Utah in magnifying your own voice through joining with us as becoming a member of Defending Utah and taking advantage of all the benefits there to be able to magnify your voice. Brian, Kevin?
Yeah. Teach your family, your friends, your neighborhood. I mean, we just have to basically educate people one at a time, and
that's where it starts. Not to say that that's not where it ends. That's where it starts, because if you are uneducated about the truth and you start becoming engaged and involved, you're going to start promoting and trying to actually, you're going to be more damaging to liberty. So that's why we say you have to become informed and overcome the propaganda first. There's a saying that I like a lot is education without action leads to frustration. You learn the truth about these things, but you're not doing anything about it. It just drives you crazy. But on the other hand, if you are activism without education leads to fanaticism. If you're just kind of acting just based on some emotional thing, you're going to be like the other caller talking about Antifa and the things that they're engaged in. And so you've got to mix the two responsibly together if you're going to actually turn this around.
It's good to learn to have a discourse with your friends where you disagree and aren't fighting. Because it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be contentious. You just have to stand up for the truth. So if you can learn to have a discourse with your friends where you're discussing, the truth versus the lies, and you can do it respectably, then that's a positive.
Yeah. And as we start to get engaged in these things, then we can start to actually organize locally in our own communities to actually turn these things around. We've got cities that are actually right now behind the scenes. We don't broadcast everything that we do because we want to make sure that the enemies of freedom aren't able to undermine it and stop it. But we've got cities across the state that are actually withdrawing from Agenda 21 programs right now. And we've got cities that are actually, we've got a majority of the members of the city council are actually members of Defending Utah. And so we've got these things going on to actually be able to restore liberty, and you can be a part of that. We've got a bunch of the phone lines ringing right now. Let's go ahead, Kevin, and then we can go to the phone lines.
Oh, can you imagine taking over city council and stopping the waste and stopping the oppression of new small businesses that want to start and people that want to build their building projects, where they have to go begging for permission to the city council? If that's you, if you've been in that place before, join our group.
Yeah. And then we're seeing that in many cities across the state. And, of course, the media is not covering it because they don't want it to spread. And that's the thing is the media is they only attack things that they actually promote. It's free advertising. We have cities across the state of Utah right now that are getting rid of permits, building permits, that are getting rid of business permits.
Yahoo!
But you're not going to hear about that on the mainstream media, and because they do not want you to know about that, they do not want that spreading.
We should have a call in like Dave Ramsey does, the We're Debt Free. We should do the We're Permit Free.
So let's go to the phone lines. If you want to be part of the conversation, 801-254-1640, 254-1640. Let's go to line 3. You're on K-Talk with Ben, Kevin, and Brian.
Yeah, hey, just wanted to chime in on the sacred cow issue. I live in the North Ogden area, and we had our mayor get killed in Afghanistan last fall. And some of the kind of the emotional outcry of what he had done has really spilled over, and you get the effect, kind of that Orrin Hatch of Mitt Romney, worship that can do no wrong.
Right.
But the media never tells that Mayor Taylor, he actually volunteered to go to Afghanistan rather than being, obligated deployment. And so I work in software, and I've always had a problem with, since he got killed, how everybody has him on this pedestal as this great, brave warrior. And in software, we have to do risk assessments and risk documents and all this kind of stuff. And for a guy who has a family with 7 kids to go to weigh that decision to say, hey, I'm going to volunteer and go deploy for a year in Afghanistan, it is so, bizarre, the thought pattern, because everybody here, the media portrayed it that he got deployed, but it was a volunteer thing, and yet now he's given all these accolades of being this brave guy, and it gets portrayed as this great story in the thing, and you go, was it really truly a good decision for a guy who is a father of 7 to leave those kids here and take that risk to go to a war zone? He had political ambitions to one day become a lieutenant governor or even governor, and was working on
he was part of
science bachelor.
He was part of all the right organizations to make that happen as well.
Yeah, he got a political science bachelor's degree, got a master's degree in public administration, was working on a doctorate in international studies, and it is so the cognitive disconnect between some of the decisions he made in our city. He put an amphitheater in a neighborhood with 100 parking spots and said thousands of people come and enjoy this thing, and it's $3 or $4 million that a city of 15,000 people can't afford. But the effect is, since he's gotten killed, there's all this momentum to finish his projects and to do this and
get that martyr effect on him.
Yes, and we see that, and it's almost the opposite of the Trump derangement syndrome that goes on. I'm sad he got killed, but in the same thing, for political ambitions of trying to set him up to have a military pedigree to be able to be an effective leader down the road or to get more electability, that was the risk he did, and he paid that risk at the cost of his life, and his kids won't have him for the rest of their lives. So
I don't mean to cut you off, but better let you go. We're getting to the end of the program. Thanks so much for the call.
Thank you.
So as we wrap things up, Brian from LatterdayConservative.com, what are your thoughts on the final thoughts on what we can do to preserve liberty?
Oh, I would just invite anybody that wants to be more involved with education to reach out to us off the air, and we can help you with that, with ways to share the truth with your friends and family. And in some circumstances, if you want to get a group together, we could even come out and be there with you to help educate others.
Yep. We can't do this alone. We've got to gather together to be able to preserve liberty.